What happens when the person helping others understand their minds is also navigating their own neurodivergent brain? As a Black woman, a therapist, and someone with ADHD, I'm here to share my story of what it really means to be neurodivergent in mental health and why this conversation matters now more than ever.
The content on this channel is for educational and wellness purposes only. It is not intended to replace professional mental health care, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of a qualified mental health provider with any questions you may have regarding your well-being. If you are in crisis, call or text 988 in the US or use the appropriate helpline in your country.
So people think that ADHD means that you can't focus. The reality, sometimes you focus so hard you forget to eat, sleep, or even notice when the sun went down. And that's just one part of what it means to be neurodivergent. So neurodivergent is an umbrella term for people whose brain process, learn, or behave differently from what's considered to be typical. It's not just ADHD or autism, though those are the common ones that people think of first. It can also include dyslexia, Tourette's, sensory processing differences, and so much more. Yes, some people are born neurodivergent, but others can become so through brain injury or mental health conditions. My friend Sen, she calls it neurospicy. I love that. Now she says she didn't coin it, but I swear she's like the only person I've ever heard say it. But it's a playful way to say my brain's wiring has its own unique flavor. And I think it's just an awesome word to say. So I call it neurospicy. So let's clear up a few myths, okay? Myth number 1, neurodivergence means that you're broken. Reality, it's a different operating system, not a defective one. Myth 2, ADHD means that you're lazy or disorganized. The reality is that many of us are hyperproductive in bursts, but our brains are wired for novelty and not monotony. Myth 3, you can fix neurodivergence with willpower. That's great. That's really great. But it's more about working with your brain, not against it. For me, learning these truths versus the myths, this didn't happen overnight. It started with a question that I honestly didn't expect. So I think in my last short, I was sharing about an experience with a previous therapist, my own provider. And I had been in therapy for about a year, and I remember I had switched providers and had been working with this new provider for a couple of months. And I just remember that one day we were reviewing my treatment plan and progress with my plan. And then she asked me, has anyone ever talked to you about ADHD? I mean, sure. Not directly, but yeah. I can remember there being comments about me always being lost in my own world when I was a kid. And there, around that same time I was working with this therapist, there was this like whole role-playing exercise that happened during a group supervision activity at my internship site, and it kind of came up during the role play. Like, yes, deep down I knew, but growing up in my family, we didn't really give our issues or problems names. It was your problems, your issues are things that you just learn to deal with. And I was raised to not show that you're struggling even when you are. In my household, like a lot of other Black households, neurodivergence is something that you kind of deal with privately, quietly, and if I'm being honest, sometimes just not at all. Now, this wasn't the first time I'd had this conversation about me possibly having ADHD, but it was the first time that a professional had really asked me to consider what this was going to mean for me as it relates to me. Not gonna lie, that moment kind of cracked something for me. I kind of talked about that in that short. It felt like I had been trying to put together this puzzle, like my life is the puzzle, and I was trying to put it together, and I was on the last piece, or maybe even second to last, and I was trying to put the puzzle piece in, but it wasn't fitting. But it's like it doesn't fit anywhere else. This is the only place it can fit, and it just wouldn't fit, and then finally it just fit. It just clicked, and it just fit. So how does ADHD show up for me in my life and with my So as a therapist, my ADHD means that in sessions, I can pick up on subtle emotional cues. I'm able to hyper focus and think creatively about solutions, but it also means that I need systems to manage my time, my paperwork, and transitions. As a flight attendant, it helps me adapt quickly and reads people's needs, but sensory overload is a real thing and it can get very overstimulating sometimes. And then as a creator, I get these bursts of inspiration that allow me to produce amazing work, but I have to be very intentional about pacing myself to avoid burnout.
Here's what works for me. Grounding techniques before sessions or flights. Visual cues and alarms to keep me on track. Self-compassion. Giving myself permission to rest without guilt. These aren't one size fits all, but they've helped me work with my brain instead of fighting it.
Needless to say, building routines has been one of the biggest things that's been helpful, but also learning to recognize the signs that things are becoming mundane, it helps too. Also having a really rock solid support system of people who, even if they don't always understand what I'm going through and what I'm dealing with, they still try to show up, especially to remind me to give myself grace. That is one of the hardest things. Powerful. Figuring out the best case or best course of action for you. It doesn't happen overnight. I've had my diagnosis for about 4 years now. And this is obviously something I've been kind of dealing with for my entire life. So I've had several strategies over the years, but professionally speaking, like I've only had a diagnosis for 4 years now, and I'm still learning how to navigate it. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of patience and willingness to do the work to prioritize your wellness journey. That's why I do this work. That's why I want to rebrand my YouTube channel so that I can not only share my experiences, but maybe also encourage others to prioritize themselves and really, really take their wellness seriously. But there's this one part about being a neurodivergent therapist that I don't know if anybody talks about. And we're going to talk about that next time in my next video. My name is Keyayanna. I'm a licensed clinical mental health counselor, a Reiki practitioner, a holistic wellness coach, hopefully your new favorite aviation mental health advocate. And this is Mindset and Miles, where grounded strategies help your inner wings take flight. Subscribe for mindful practices, soulful self-discovery, and real talk about working with your brain, not against it. I will see you in my next short or video. Bye.